I was really hoping it was giving Matilda Jerf, but I feel like it's more so giving Chessie from Parent Trap. I don't know how I feel about it, but welcome to another wrap up, guys. I read 11 books in the month of July. This is all of them. I didn't do any Kindle reads this month. Actually, like, that's kind of a lie. I did like a tandem read with some of these. Like, I read some of them partly as a physical copy, but then like partly on Kindle when I was traveling. I had quite a few trips this past month. I think I had at least one trip a week. So I think that's why I didn't read as much as I normally do. I feel like 11 is still a great amount of books and I'm very happy with the amount that I read, but I definitely wasn't flying through books this month at all. Near the end of the month, I felt like I was getting into a slump and I was like so worried because I love reading. It makes me so happy. And when I'm in a slump, it doesn't make me happy, but it turns out I got sick. So it wasn't like a lack of motivation for reading. It was just because I was sick and I didn't want to do absolutely anything at all. So I'm sorry if I still sound a little sick. I'm feeling a lot better and I don't think I'm in a reading slump. So all is well in the world of books for me. But let's just get started on the books that I read this month. The first book I finished this month was Addicted After All by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the 7th book in the Addicted/Calloway Sisters series. It's also the last book in the Addicted series. If you don't know, the Addicted and the Calloway Sisters series are like a conjoined series. You can read them together or separately, and I'm reading them together. So this is the 7th book. I have 3 books left, which I'm devastated about because I'm obsessed, so obsessed with this series, as many people are. I've been trying to space it out as much as possible because I know that I'll be devastated when it's over. And in my opinion, it's like, obviously you can binge it if you want, but I think it's so much more special to space it out because the characters in this book will literally become your best friends. So if you want to feel like you're living life with best friends, I think you should space it out. But this was Lily and Lo's final book. If you don't know, the series is about a friend group made up of 3 couples, and each book is in the POV of a different couple. This is Lily and Lo. It's their last book. I'm so sad about it because they are my absolute favorite couple in the series. Let me know which vibes I give off. If you love the Addicted Calloway Sisters series, who would you guess would be my favorite couple if you didn't know that I love Lily and Lo? Because I don't know if I give off those vibes, but anyway, back to the book. This was a 5-star read for me. It was by far my favorite in the series so far. I feel like we just had such beautiful moments with the characters. We had such great character development, and I feel like we just got quite a few happy moments, which there's a lot of drama in this series. There's a lot of sadness in this series. So to get those really wholesome, beautiful, happy moments made my heart swell. Love this. Definitely recommend that series if you haven't read it already. There is a lot of spice though, so keep that in mind because I know not all of you love that. Okay, if you guys watched my TBR at the start of the month, I said that I was determined to finish the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and I did it. I finished Siege and Storm and Ruin and Rising, therefore completing the series. Shadow and Bone is the first book in this little trilogy, but this trilogy is also a part of a bigger world, I guess, called the Grishaverse, and I haven't read all of the books in the rest of that world, I guess, that universe. What did I think of these? I didn't love them, which is sad because I really, really wanted to love them. But in my opinion, Shadow and Bone was so much better than these 2 books, which is confusing because I feel like it is very rare for me to love the first book the most out of a series, because I love series. I love them so much, and I feel like part of the reason why I love them so much is because you just get to see so much more of the characters, and the plot gets to have so much detail, so much foreshadowing. But I just felt like I was so intrigued when I read the first book and I was so invested, and these ones I was just literally waiting for them to be over, which is so sad. So I think I rated both of them like 3.5 stars. It was a type of book that when I was reading them, I was interested and the book was good. Neither of these books are bad, but at no point in time when I wasn't reading them did I wish I was reading them. Does that make sense? Like there was no point where I was excited to pick these up, but when I did pick them up, I did enjoy them. So do I recommend the Shadow and Bone trilogy? I'm not going to say no because it's not bad, but I just think there are so many other YA fantasies and YA fantasy series out there that are so much better. So if someone came to me and they were like, would you recommend this? I'd probably say, yeah, it's okay. But if you just came to me asking for fantasy recommendations, this would not be at the top of my list at all. In saying that, I am still planning on reading the Six of Crows duology because I've heard that that is phenomenal, but I think I might give it a bit of time before I pick it up because I'm just not excited about it at the moment. But I will eventually get to it, I promise. On a more exciting note, I finally picked up the Summer I Turn Pretty trilogy, which was so highly anticipated. I've just heard so much about this series, about these books, about the characters. There is so much hype around these books, especially at the moment or recently because of the Amazon Prime series that came out of it. And guys, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I still haven't watched the series. I'm not sure if I will. I'm just not a TV girly. I don't really watch much TV apart from Love Island and Survivor. As you can see, I have phenomenal taste in TV. But the books, loved. So as for my ratings, the first book I rated 5 stars, the second book I rated 4.5 stars, and the last book I rated 4 stars. So I definitely recommend all of them, but I would say that this book was, in my opinion, so much better than the next two. The first book gave immaculate vibes, just like the perfect YA summer read. Falling in love for the first time, having a summer romance, being by the beach. I could literally like see the waves of the beach in my mind. I could picture every scene of this book so perfectly in my brain, and it just was such an experience reading it. Like I felt that nostalgia, even though I haven't had a summer romance, I haven't fallen in love with a boy on a holiday when I was a teenager, but it felt like I had, like it felt like it was being nostalgic for me. And I think it was just because the descriptions were so perfect and the way it was written was so good. Yes, some of the characters annoy me at times, but I feel like that was also almost on purpose because all the kids are teenagers. They don't really know what they're doing. They're kind of figuring stuff out. They're gonna do annoying things. They're gonna make mistakes. They're gonna make choices that we don't agree with, but that's kind of the whole point about being a teenager and also falling in love for the first time and also going through the things that these characters went through. The whole point of the characters kind of messing up is because they're dealing with things and don't know how to deal with those emotions that come along with the situations, I guess I will say. The second book, I still really enjoyed this. Again, I really liked the storyline. I thought it was really interesting to have something a little bit different. It didn't give me that same like beautiful nostalgic vibe. It didn't give me that just like, oh, it's so lovely and like falling in love and whatever. It was kind of slightly more annoying, but I still really enjoyed it. And then the third book, I got really annoyed. Again, still really enjoyed it. 4 stars is a phenomenal rating, honestly. But the second and third book, I just feel like it could have happened a different way. As Belly started getting older especially, she did more things that I was like, Belly, I don't really agree with that. And also the whole idea of a love triangle between brothers honestly frustrates me a little bit because you are messing with a literal family. Like you are breaking down a relationship between brothers, and that I don't agree with. Obviously it's a book, it's not real. It's a fictional situation, but just the idea of breaking up a relationship between 2 brothers, like there's just, stay out of it, Belly. Everyone's like, Rachel, which team are you on? And I'm kind of like, I'm team Belly should have stayed single, if I'm being completely honest. I feel like she should have picked a different guy who did not exist at the summer house, because she just made things so much messier than they needed to be. In saying that, I was happy with the ending. I think she ended up with who I wanted her to end up with and who she was supposed to if you really understand the books. I really enjoyed this series. I definitely think it's worth the read. They are so easy to read. I think they're all under 300 pages, which is amazing because they're so quick to read. And I honestly do feel like they're the perfect summer read. So I'm very glad that I finally get what all the hype is about. And if you're wondering, I got the box set of these books from Amazon US. I ordered it in Australia, obviously, but it is from Amazon US because you cannot get these covers in Australia. And I always get questions about that, so thought I'd let you guys know. Next, Legendborn by Tracy Dion. It took me a long time to decide what rating I was going to give this book because I just have so many conflicting opinions, I guess. I think I'm going to give this like a 4 or a 4.25 potentially. It was really good. I really enjoyed this book. The only reason it wasn't a 5-star for me was, one, this book is complicated. Like, if you don't know, this is a YA fantasy. It also has kind of dark academia vibes, kind of, it's like a secret society at a college. So a really interesting setting. I loved the whole idea of like secret societies, being at college, pretending you're like a normal college student, but also being a part of a secret society. That is super cool to me. But in this book, that secret society, there's also magic involved. So it's kind of an urban fantasy in the sense of a lot of characters in this book who are attending the college have no idea that magic even exists. And the main character doesn't even know that magic exists until she kind of experiences it for herself. But obviously there's a whole side of this world where there is magic and magical creatures and almost like this warfare that's going on that so many people just don't even know exists. So it's urban fantasy in that respect. It's just complicated. The secret society and the magic itself is revolved around King Arthur and the Round Table, and that is so interesting, but it also took me so long to fully grasp that concept, and I don't know if I even have grasped it fully, and I could definitely not explain this to someone else. Like if someone was like, oh, can you explain this situation of the magic, like how it works, I would not be able to explain it because it was so confusing to me. In saying that, I don't want to say that's negative, but it just took me a really long time to almost get that whole world building side of things. Like there is so much world building that goes on in this book throughout the entire book. At no point did I feel like I was like, okay, I've got the world building down, I get it, I can kind of just like focus on the characters and what's actually happening. Like the whole time I was still kind of like, okay, but that character did this and like they're in this position and like they're related to this person, and like I was just confused the whole time. So I did think that stopped me from enjoying this book as much as I could have. And especially for being a YA book, I was like, if I had read this when I was like 15, I would have had no idea what was going on, but still really, really good, and also just so unique, which I loved. It was not like any other fantasy book that I've read. And the second reason why I would hesitate to give it 5 stars is it was just really long. Like I am so confused because this book is less than 500 pages, but it took me so long to get through. It felt like a 700-page book, and to be fair, the text is very small on the pages, and I also ended up getting the audiobook for this at one point. And the audiobook is 18 hours. Like just to put that into perspective, Crown of Midnight, which is a similar size to it, like it looks fairly similar when you just look at them, is like 13 hours, I think. 18 hours, 13. So like it's a lot longer than it appears, in my opinion. And so it just felt like it dragged on for a long time. I was reading this for most of the month. At no point did I feel like I was flying through this book and like get into that kind of like sense of flow. And I just wish I had that experience, because I feel like so many people do have that experience reading this book. They're just like, oh my gosh, I was just so encapsulated by it and it just consumed me, and I just didn't have that experience. But apart from those things, it was a phenomenal book, so interesting, so intriguing. It also talks about some really important topics, and I feel like it did it really, really well. So I definitely recommend this, but I would just like go in knowing that it's probably going to be a bit complicated. Maybe you won't think it is. Maybe I'm just a little bit challenged in that way. And also go in with the perspective that it's probably going to feel like a 600 to 700 page book. I wouldn't say it's just like a quick and easy read. I am so excited to talk about the next 3 books. If you guys follow me on Instagram or even TikTok, you already know this, but I started the Throne of Glass series, and I am genuinely already obsessed. Like it is so freaking good. I love it so much. The reading order did stress me out for a bit because so many people say to read it differently. It's a little bit overwhelming and intimidating when you have no idea what this series is about and you're scared that you're going to ruin it just by reading it in the wrong order. So I started with Throne of Glass, and honestly, I read this in like 2 sittings. I flew through it. It was so good to me. The plot was so good. I love the main character. Absolutely love this. The plot of this one was really intriguing to me, and it really just set me up to be obsessed with this series. So I finished this and I was like, okay, now I don't know what to do, because a lot of people say to read Assassin's Blade first, but also some people say to read it, I think, third. And I'm pretty sure the reason some people say to read it third is because I think if you read this, it ruins some things that happen later in the series. Forgive me if I'm wrong, I'm not an expert, obviously. But I was like, if I keep reading this, I'm not going to want to pick up this. Like if I keep going with the rest of this series and keep following this timeline and this plot, then I'm not going to want to go back in time and read this. So I was like, I'm gonna read this now, second, even though that doesn't really make sense, just so that I can kind of almost get it over and done with. Like that was my mindset. So I read this one next, and I'm really, really glad that I did. And I would honestly recommend reading this one first. Again, I'm not an expert, so do whatever the heck you want to do. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's a life-altering decision about when you read each book. You know what I mean? Like, just pick a reading order and follow it. Like it doesn't have to be that deep. But if I was recommending it to a friend, I would probably suggest start with this one, because it is a prequel, and in the timeline of things, these stories happen first, and these stories lead into what happens in this book. So this story starts off about Selena and her being a prisoner and the king kind of asking her to be involved in a competition that he has running. This book explains how Selena became an assassin and also how she got to the point of being a prisoner, which is where this one obviously starts off. So I do think read this one first. It makes other things make more sense later in the series, but I will say I didn't enjoy this one as much. It's made up of like 4 or 5 shorter stories about her adventures of being an assassin and all of the like training she received and friendships she made and things like that, but it just wasn't as gripping to me as Throne of Glass was. So I think this is like a 4-star read for me probably, but I totally understand why it's necessary for context. I feel like I've made things so complicated, but obviously I read this one, then I read Assassin's Blade, and then I jumped back into the series with Crown of Midnight, which is technically the one that follows Throne of Glass. I did really enjoy this one. I probably didn't enjoy it quite as much as Throne of Glass, but I've now started the book that follows this one, and so I feel like I'd probably give this one like a 4 stars as well, because the one I'm reading right now is Heir of Fire, and I know a lot of people love that one, and I feel like it's almost where the real series begins, because there is so much more going on in the 4th book, and there is just like so many new characters and so many new storylines coming in, and I feel like that one is probably going to be a 5-star read for me. So 4 stars, 4.5, 4, and we'll see how the series progresses. And the final book that I read in July was a romance book, and it's called Last Time We Met by Emily Houghton. I apologize if that's incorrect. This is a semi-new release. I believe it was released in May. I just found this at Dimmicks. I have had some people say that they can't find it online, so I'm not exactly sure where you can get it. Like I said, I got mine at Dimmicks, but I will say, if you can get your hands on this, I totally recommend. This was a 5-star read for me, which I was not expecting. I literally was just in the bookshop one day when Liam and I were on one of our trips, and I was in the romance section. I picked up this book because it just obviously looked really cute, and when I was reading the back of it, I was like, this just sounds like it's right up my alley. Friends to lovers, second chance romance. And I know so many people love those tropes. I definitely do. So this book is about Eleanor and Finn. They were best friends as kids, grew up with each other, their parents were good friends, and when they get into their early adulthood, they get separated. Finn moves overseas and they lose contact. Eleanor feels like Finn just kind of like up and left, but Finn kind of has his reasons, but obviously they just continue living life alone. And then one day Finn ends up coming home because of like a family situation, and they reconnect, which is kind of a classic trope. I don't know, I feel like this really gave me Emily Henry vibes, and I really hesitate to say that because I know that the Emily Henry community is an absolute cult following, and some people are genuinely obsessed with her writing, and I think she is a fantastic writer as well. So I don't want to give you incorrect expectations, but it just gave me that same feeling of being that like literary fiction cross between a romance. Like obviously the romance is the main plot of this book, but there is so much more going on in the background. Each of the characters has baggage and has their own story, and obviously there are reasons for why they lost their friendship and come back together again, and there's just like so much more to the story than just a romance, which I personally love. I also thought this was just such a wholesome, beautiful story. There is absolutely no spice in this book. So again, if you love spice, this is probably not the book for you. It is as wholesome can get, which is right up my alley, and I freaking loved it. And I just wish there were more books like this. Like this book just scratched that itch for me. You know what I mean? Like it just was that perfect, wholesome romance. This also gave me similar vibes to Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne, if you have read that, just in the sense of it being that really wholesome story. The only critique I have of this is probably that I wanted more of it. Like I wanted a longer book because I feel like there were some parts of the story that could have been developed further. There was a specific thing that Finn had previously dealt with and kind of, I guess, grown from, but I wish we got to see like more of his story in that way. There was also a past relationship that Eleanor had that I really wish we got to see more of, because it obviously had shaped her a lot into the person that she was when we met her in this book. But I really wish we had heard kind of more about that journey of that relationship, because it was so integral to her journey. But if my only critique was that I wanted more, I don't think it's a bad book, you know what I mean? So definitely recommend this if you can get your hands on it. Super cute as well. Absolutely love a cute little romance like this. But those are all the books that I have to talk about today. I hope you guys enjoyed this wrap up. I will have my TBR hopefully coming in a couple days time, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to see what I'm hoping to read in the month of August. If you didn't notice, I only read romance and fantasy this past month, and so I'm going to try and step out of my comfort zone a little bit in this coming month and read some different things. books because I need to step out of my comfort zone a little bit. Romance and fantasy is not all that's out there, and I want to be better about experiencing other genres. So stay tuned for that. As always, I would also love to know what your favorite book that you read in July was. I'm always looking for more recommendations. If you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts. I love chatting in the comments with you guys. But I love you all so much, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Goodbye.